Well, the main purpose of the Free Gaza flotilla, or the Freedom Flotilla, was to break the embargo, break the blockade that Israel has around Gaza. It's an illegal blockade, and the UN Security Council has said that the blockade shouldn't be there, that humanitarian aid should be able to freely go into Gaza. But the Israelis don't care, and they've set up a blockade, and they control what goes in and out of Gaza. So we were taking aid, but the main point was to physically break the blockade to get into Gaza. Certainly on the Israeli border, it's tightly controlled, and between Egypt and Gaza, it's blockaded as well. The Israelis really call the shots on the Egyptian side as well. And then on the ocean side, which should be open to the world, this is our point, is that the Gaza has a border with the world, and we should be able to bring humanitarian aid in, take Gazans out for medical care or for schooling, and take exports out of Gaza so that they can have an industry again, have an economy, employ people, and get something going within Gaza. But right now, the Israelis, it's basically collective punishment, which the Geneva Convention says you can't do that. That's what came out of the Second World War, was that countries can't collectively punish people like what the Germans did. And this is what the Israelis are doing. They're collectively punishing everybody in Gaza.
Oh, how many ships were trying to go in with you?
There were six. There was Mavi Marmara, and then there were three freighters, and then two small passenger ships, one from the United States and one from Greece. And then the three freighters were supported by a variety of countries: Sweden, Ireland, Indonesia, Greece, Turkey. Many countries pitched in to send these three freighters. They're all attacked to different degrees. The freighters were very easy to board. They only had small crews, so they were taken over without any resistance, so to speak, or whatever, because it was a simple matter. There was a small ship, the Challenger 1, like about a 70-foot yacht. It was violently attacked by the Israelis, and a Belgian woman got beat up. An Australian filmmaker was tasered and put to the deck. So, and then the main attack was on our ship, the smaller Greek ship. It was attacked as well, the passenger ship. It suffered some beatings and whatnot, and people were thrown into the water. But the main actual assault were all the injuries, major injuries, shootings, and all the deaths occurred on the ship that I was on, the Mavi Marmara. And there was nine murdered, and I understand 30 to 40 gunshot wounds, and then many more were broken bones and simply beaten up. So first I saw one body, a dead Turk aid worker. He had been shot in his torso, but then he had two bullet holes in the side of his head, twin bullet holes. And I initially thought that looks like an execution, but that can't be. That, they can't be executing people on the deck. These are unarmed, civilians. And then I saw a second aid worker with very similar wounds to his head. And that's when I thought, well, they're actually executing people on the deck. They're wounding them. The people are falling on the deck, and then they're walking up and shooting them.
Did they use live ammunition on all the ships?
Only our ship. They only used live ammunition on our ship.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because our ship, the people resisted, and the people on our ship, we were in international waters, and even if we weren't in international waters, we were a humanitarian aid ship. Gaza has its own shoreline that it should control, not the Israelis, because the Israelis are illegally occupying Gaza. So even if we were within Gazan waters, it wouldn't matter. We were a humanitarian aid ship. The people, the Israelis that were attacking us, international law would dictate that they were criminals. They were international law said that we were in the right, that we had a right to, not that I resisted myself, but that the people on board, they resisted, and they tried to push the Israelis off. They didn't violently attack them, when they just tried to push them away. They tried to push the Zodiacs that pulled up to us, tried to push them away and spray water on them with fire hoses. And then but then when they started to shoot from the helicopters and shoot people on the deck, that's when a stronger resistance came out of the Turks, and so they shot on the deck, killed a couple of activists, wounded some other ones. Then when the Israelis landed on the deck after they started shooting, that's when the Turks overpowered the first commandos that landed on the deck and disarmed them and then took them inside the ship. I saw two of these commandos being brought into the ship and taken below for medical attention and to be held on the lower deck. You can see Yara Lee did a video and smuggled the video off the ship. So there is about a 1 hour video. A half hour of it is of the attack. You can go to culturesofresistance.com or just Google Yara Lee, Mavi Marmara. I didn't believe they would attack our ship because our ship was many women on board. There was 50 to 100 women, many elderly men. The bulk of the people on board were middle-aged, older men, professionals, doctors, nurses, teachers and whatnot, just average citizens from Turkey and Indonesia and Malaysia, Pakistan, Kuwait, Jordan, from all over the world, humanitarian aid workers. And the captain was actually, when the Israelis showed up I saw the lights of their ships about 11:30 the night before. When the captain knew they were there, he actually took our ship away from the shoreline, taking us further into international waters, because he didn't want a confrontation to happen in the dark. So he wanted, if there was going to be a confrontation or the Israelis were going to board our ship to inspect anything, he wanted it to happen in daylight next morning. So he took us away from the coast, further into international waters. Then he was going to turn and then come in and arrive at the border, the maritime border, in daylight. As a negotiating point, I understand the activists from the organization, the flotilla, would agree to the Israelis coming on board with a UN inspector of some sort with them, or a third party of some sort. Mm-hmm. They would inspect. Mm-hmm. They would find no weapons. There were no weapons on board, and then we would carry on into Gaza City and unload. But the Israelis they had a plan, and the plan was to take over the ships, and they certainly followed through with the plan.
So I understand there's a new flotilla going.
Yes. There's a flotilla going in this fall. We're not quite sure of the date. I'm told in October sometime. I understand there's already a dozen ships. We had 6 ships, and from what I hear, there's a dozen ships lined up to go, and hopefully a Canadian ship. There is a push right now from a number of Canadian organizations, Independent Jewish Voices, Jews for a Just Peace, the Arab Federation of Canada, the Canadian Palestine Association, all sorts of different organizations. Our local group, Kaya, the Coalition Against Israeli Apartheid in Victoria, stopwar.ca. There's many organizations right across the country are all banding together to raise money they're trying to get $300,000.
$300,000.
$300,000 that will get a ship, a crew, and everything they need to get to Gaza, and then the aid will be on top of that. But so if you wanted to find out about the flotilla in general, you should go to freegaza.org. Okay. If you want to find out about the Canadian ship in particular, you'd go to canadaboatgaza.org. canadaboatgaza.org. But if you go to freegaza.org, there'll be a link on that site to all the ships. There's a ship from Lebanon, and it's entirely crewed by Lebanese, well, not Lebanese, I guess, but women. It could be Lebanese women, but it's entirely crewed, and the passengers are all women.
There's a journalist ship going. Apparently, I read because the journalist was so upset about what happened to the Mavi Marmara, that they decided to make their own ship.
There were 60 journalists on the Mavi, and the crew member who was in charge of liaison for the media room for communications and whatnot, he was shot right between the eyes by the Israelis, and the thinking is that he was an important crew member because he controlled the communications, the satellite communications off of the ship, and he was doing his job. He was filming the Israelis' assault on the ship, and it wasn't. I would say it wasn't an accident. I would say they targeted him and shot him right between the eyes, killed him immediately, and his wife was on board the ship as well, and so yeah, because of things like that, the journalists were very upset. So I don't know about this ship, but I'm not surprised that the journalists are going to send a ship. I'm sure all the ships will have journalists on board. There's actually a ship being sponsored by the German Jewish community, which I thought was wonderful. That the European German Jewish community is going to sponsor a ship
out of Germany.
Out of Germany, and yeah.
And then there's another Jewish ship going, I understand, out of New York.
Oh, well, again, things are moving faster than what I know about. I know with the Canadian organization, it's the support is actually growing so fast, it's outpacing the volunteers' ability to keep up with it. That they're scrambling to get all the endorsers on the website, because people are coming forward to endorse it, organizations and dignitaries, that they can't keep up with the need.
What can ordinary Canadians do?
Well, certainly they can support the Canadian ship, or they can support the Free Gaza movement in general, either through donations or going with them, either with the Canadian ship or with the larger Free Gaza movement. They'll have ships out of the United States. They could certainly lobby our government. There was no support from the government itself. They were hostile. No one's ever come forward to ask me what has happened to me. No one's come forward from the government to see what illegal things were done to me by the Israelis. They threatened to kill me a number of times. They held me. Basically, it was torture. They held us in basically stress positions for hours and hours at a time. They wouldn't allow us to use a washroom. I did what the Geneva Convention says you should do. You should challenge things that are illegal. You should challenge human rights violations. So I did. If I saw that they were going to be shooting somebody, I stood up and challenged their right to put a gun to a person's head. And they put the gun to my head then. And if they were going to beat somebody, I stood up and stood with them if they're going to beat some Turkish people on the deck. And
where are you getting the courage to go again?
My parents. My mom and dad. My earliest memory as a child is, one of my earliest memories was my mother and father were Marxists. My mother's from a Finnish family, so there's 4 generations of Finnish Marxists in my family. And one of my earliest memories is standing in front of the old Bay store in Victoria, Hudson Bay, in a silent vigil with my mother. I must have been about 6 years old. And it was against Vietnam War, silent vigils of peace against Vietnam War. And I remember, in particular, a man in a fedora and a suit, or a coat, walking up and spitting at the foot of my mother, because she dared to be against the Vietnam War. That made her a threat to Canadians. And now we're going down the same path. You could take out communists from the 1960s and 50s and put in Muslims, and you'd have the same people to have the same response. How dare you? Like people have challenged me. They threatened my life. I got an email saying I should be whacked. Threatening, saying I should be killed for what I'm doing, and it's because I'm standing up for injustices against Muslims or Arabs or when in this case on the ship it was Turks.
This new boat, this Canadian boat to Gaza, is scheduled to go in October.
Yep, and if you go online, you can support it, and right now you can help name it. They're having a contest to name the ship, so you can go online and find all about that at canadaboatgaza.org.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Linda.